I mean, don't get me wrong. Here at Cyberpunk Now, we really like to have an edge, right? Part of what we reclaim as the cyberpunk identity is not just the power of technology, but being critical of government, being critical of corporations, being skeptical of the way in which power uses technology to not only maintain power, but get more. And that's why we will always give special attention and special love and promote the work of unions and labor organizations as a counterpower to the bosses, to the companies, to governments in general. Now, as a result of the pandemic, gig work and the gig economy has really spread. I mean, this is everything from food delivery to Uber in terms of having to get lifts, and even Airbnb. Like, you would think that Airbnb would be negatively impacted by the pandemic because people aren't traveling. And while that's sort of true, Airbnb has actually found an entirely new business in terms of quarantine and social isolation and having people have to stay places when they travel. So, the whole notion of gig workers being vulnerable and gig workers needing things like health benefits and, unemployment supports, let alone better wages and let alone an ability to have a meaningful job, that's an issue that we're really going to get behind here in MetaViews. And there's really exciting news out in the world in terms of some of the developments around organizing gig workers. I mean, this particular article talks about delivery workers and the way in which the algorithm manipulates and optimizes and really tries to shift the focus of gig workers to work harder, to work for less. I mean, I was seeing all sorts of stories around people who were having to do like Instacart and some of the other designated grocery shopping, in which they were being forced to wait in lines for a flat fee delivery that meant that they were basically getting paid like 50 cents an hour because the fee of the delivery was so low, and yet they'd be in line for over an hour to check out someone else's order. I mean, all of that was really quite ridiculous in terms of the way in which these workers are being exploited. And what the companies do is they just blame the algorithm. Right? That's the irony of gig workers. It's not as if there's some jerk who's saying, oh, you got to work harder, or, oh, I need you to make this delivery. No, it's dehumanized. It's the algorithm that's trying to get them to take another order. It's the algorithm that when they try to say, hey, I have to wait in line, I need to wait longer, the algorithm's unresponsive. The algorithm doesn't say anything. So it's so essential that we've tried to organize and find rights for these workers. So I want to take a moment to read the first few paragraphs of this article because I think it gives insights into the types of challenges people face. So Armin Sami had been biking for Uber Eats for a few weeks last July when he accepted a delivery he would estimate take 20 minutes tops. But the app led him up one of the steepest hills in Pittsburgh, a 4-mile one-way trip that clocked in at an hour. And then he noticed that Uber had only paid him for 1 mile, the distance between his origin and destination as the crow flies, but not as the man bikes. I'd only done 20 deliveries and this already happened to me, Sammy says. For people who do this full time, are they going to look this deeply into this statement? Are they ever going to find this issue? Now, Sammy's a software engineer. So he created a Google Chrome extension called Uber Cheats that helps workers spot pay discrepancies. The extension automatically extracts the start and end points of each trip and calculates the shortest travel distance between the two. If that distance doesn't match up with what Uber paid for, the extension marks it for closer examination. So far, only a few hundred workers have installed Uber Cheats on their browsers, and Sammy doesn't have access to how couriers are using the extension, but he says some have told him that they used it to find pay inconsistencies. Now, Google briefly removed the extension last week when Uber flagged it as a trademark violation, but they reversed its decision after Sammy appealed. Now, on the one hand, we have to give big props to Sammy because, he's the type of individual. It's these individual developers, these cyberpunks, who are really the ones who end up making a difference. But at the same time, we shouldn't have to rely on one individual cyberpunk, right? It shouldn't take one individual because right now it's only Sammy. It's only other people who, if they know this extension exists, have a chance to dispute what they're paid. And this says nothing about whether Uber has an actual dispute mechanism. That's why there's labor laws. That's all the role of unions. That a union could be doing this. A union could have the resources to be doing this. A union could have hackers and software developers to probe into the APIs of these platforms to then figure out what data that workers need to protect themselves and the type of data that workers need to make sure that they are themselves are not taken advantage of. Now, one of the things we love to do here on MetaViews is promote and let you know about some of the interesting Twitter and Twitch and other social media channels that we follow, that we think you should follow. And one of them is Gig Workers Rising. Gig Workers Rising is a great organization that's really trying to get app and platform workers to articulate the needs for better conditions, better pay, and better lives overall. This is a great argument. They do a lot of campaign work. We all deserve a livable wage. Our lives are more than our jobs, so we deserve fair returns for our work so that we can all enjoy our lives and thrive. And in general, the gig workers community has all sorts of interesting news and information that not only promote the rights and the benefits that gig workers demand, but also some of the technology that could not only make the gig economy better for everybody, but make the employment opportunities in the gig economy general.